all will be well. Well, hi there. It's me. Am I making noise? I can't tell. Yes, I'm making noise. Okay, for a moment there, I was worried about myself. Hey, it's me, Big Ugly Jim, and I'm here with the absolutely inimitable Casey Lewis. Casey, you are now visible to the world. Say hello.
Salutations. How are you all?
Salutation. I can't hear them directly, but I bet that they're all saying that they are doing great.
Yeah, it was rhetorical, Jim.
I know.
Yeah.
It's sometimes I forget how TVs work. We were just talking before cutting in about how, we're not young anymore. And
Yeah, well, when you're on, I was going to say when you're on stage and, you're like, how are you all doing tonight? I don't, you don't really want an answer from everybody. That'd be very unwieldy. So, you just
to be
gotta.
honest, my back's a little sore, and I'm really worried about making rent. But thanks for asking. It's probably not the best look for a good gig. Oh man, I haven't seen you I haven't seen anyone in a long time because COVID's a thing. But the last time I think I saw you, we were both by happenstance in an Indian restaurant, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
That seems accurate to me. God,
Yeah.
that was a long time ago.
It's one of the few things I'm good at is remembering dumb things the moment I realized I started moving my mouth.
Was that Namskar? Were we at Namskar?
Namskar. Yeah. Yeah. You were there with someone and I was there with someone and I came in and I saw you and I was like, hey, buddy, all cool because I like to pretend.
I think you're cool. I think a lot of people would cop to that. Be like, Jim's a cool guy.
I think what's weird about that, again, before we went live here, we were talking about, high school and stuff, and I was not cool in high school, not remotely cool, and somehow now, without changing anything, I'm cool. I'm certainly not complaining about that, but it's just weird as all hell. I don't understand what happened, but here I am, all badass.
I think you just grow into yourself over time. Over
That's
time, you start to
probably true.
realize, you start to get to know yourself. At least if you're honest with yourself, you start to get to know yourself, and you're like, this is who I am. This is what I dig, and this is what I'm about, and I don't really give a shit what anybody else thinks. It's funny because when I was in high school, I pretended like I didn't give a shit what anybody else thought, but I actually really did. I wanted everybody to think I was weird and different and, the odd kid. But over time, you start to realize that those parts of you that are odd are always going to be odd, and the parts of you that aren't.
Yeah, exactly.
But those standards do tend to change over time too. Society tends to view things in different ways. I was always a nerd, but I was always kind of a punk rock nerd. I was a rock and roll kid, so I looked a little bit edgier than my nerd friends. But we were all nerds. We all played role playing games, and that was not cool in 1987. It got cool later on, but it wasn't cool then.
I don't remember anyone finding out that I played role playing games or had a Commodore 64 or any of these things. I don't remember anyone being like, dude, do you want to hang out now? Because that wasn't the ticket. I was the kid who, it's not that I wanted to be cool or wanted to be uncool. I had no idea what cool was or how to fake it. So I was just like, I'm dancing. And people are like, what are you fucking doing? I'm like, I don't even know.
Being a teenager is odd. No matter what area you're a teenager in, you're trying to sort of ratify and make sense of, to correlate the things that you've learned from establishment, from school and from parents and from whatever, from what adults are trying to tell you is the way things are supposed to be. But when you get to that age, that sort of 13 age, you start to see the cracks in it all.
Yep.
And so you're like, how much of this should I believe? Because you guys are clearly you're trying to dilute us, and maybe you're even diluting yourselves. So once you start to see the cracks in that facade, it takes you some time to come to terms with who you are and how you fit into that. So
Absolutely.
And I don't think that's ever changed, and I doubt it'll ever change.
Probably not. I think there's something to be said about the fact that you hit a certain point where society has taught you the bare bones of like how to formulate your own thoughts and how to question the things around you. And I think that almost without exception, generations hit that stage and they've always been like, and now you should question everything. Now you should fight everything. In the popular media and stuff, back in the 50s with James Dean wearing a t shirt, not a regular shirt, a t shirt, like a man whore. I think there's something to that.
Yeah, those standards are always changing, and they're always, sometimes they're progressing and sometimes they're regressing. How
Yeah.
society frames those things. I think the fundamental problem is that, like I said, when you start to be able to see that, like, that it's not all that you've been taught it was,
Hmm.
then you start to actually, like, critically think about things. You start to be like, okay, well, you taught me to think for myself, and this is what I think. And then they're like, no, 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 don't do that.
Yep.
That's the nature of authority and control, and that goes back to the very beginning, anthropologically speaking, the beginning of our
Absolutely.
species. So, but I think that, I've always kind of identified with that spirit, the rebel spirit, the one that's like, this is not right,
Yeah.
and it needs to change. And so I've always felt a kinship to that.
Yeah. Yeah. Me too. I didn't find punk rock when I was a kid. I found rap music long before kids found rap music, especially white kids in Saru and Calgary. And I was that really obnoxious kid who had like six tapes that he managed to get his hands on and made everyone listen to them at all times and tried to understand like the plight of the world and really was just terrible at that. But I had that same sense of like the world there is not justice and we need to make change and we need to fight for everyone. And I'm glad, like, my take on it was probably not a normal take, but I'm glad that I went through the things I went through to get where I did and become the man that I became.
Yeah, I mean, for me, music played an integral role for that, and it wasn't
Yep.
just punk rock. I mean, for me, it's kind of all rebel music. And when you look at the beginnings of most genres of music, going back hundreds of years, even, most of the sort of isolated genres that we sort of view as a style of music, they all came from a rebel place. All of
Mm-hmm.
them. They
Yep.
always start there because those are the people that have something to say. So, like, hip hop is a rebel music that started from the street, just like punk rock and just like metal and just like rock and roll before it. These are
Yep.
all genres that started. They started on the street. They started with people of limited means trying to express their frustration with the world around them, or to express their joy in celebrating their community. Because there's plenty of music that came out of really, really difficult or challenging conditions for people that were celebratory or joyous. But in a
Yep.
way, that's still rebellion, because it's basically, like, the reason gospel music exists is because of slavery. It exists because these people were treated in the most inhumane and horrible way possible, and they found ways to keep their own humanity and their own spirituality alive. And so those types of musics were banned, and that
Yep.
tends to be the case. Is like, anybody who's trying to ban a type of music that challenges the establishment, it's the same script over and over and over again throughout history. And so for me, like, when I was a kid, punk rock, metal, hip hop, they were all cut from the same cloth. I mean,
Yep.
I loved hip hop in the late '80s, and it was the same for punk and metal. I never really saw the divide. I had friends who were headbangers and were like, "Oh, punk's lame, it sucks," and I was like, "How can you say that? It has
Mm-hmm.
the same. To me, it has the same spirit. It's
Yep.
it's an aggressive music that comes from a rebellious place, and I like that." And somebody
Yep.
once asked me what like the best punk records of all time was, and this was a long time ago. And I put Nation of Millions by Public Enemy on it, and they were super angry. I was just like, I mean, that's the punkest shit I've ever heard.
Oh,
Like
absolutely. That whole album.
it's what a bomb that record is.
And
And
yeah,
it's
like,
still relevant today. Like most of what's on
mhm,
it is still relevant today. That's the mark of a classic right there.
absolutely. 15-year-old me, I'd heard the name Public Enemy because of my, digging around trying to find whatever I could. This is before the internet, kids. Trying to find whatever I could about hip hop music that wasn't the radio, because this was back in the days of like Rob Bass and DJ Easy Rock and the really really watered down hip hop music. So I was trying to find the real stuff because that's what I was interested in, and I bought "It Takes a Nation of Millions." I bought it on cassette at the attic. I brought it home and I put it on, and just like my mind blew, and I was like, "Oh my
Yeah.
god, this is the most amazing." I don't even know what this is, but it's
It's
brilliant.
it's heavy and relentless and political and uncompromising. It's all the things I want out of punk rock and metal too. Like it's
Yep.
that same sort of thing. And of course, it's
Yep.
like musically engaging. Like the the layers that are in it are absolutely brilliant. Props to Terminator X for that. But
Hmm.
like it's just a great record. Do you remember what the first hip hop song you ever heard was?
First hip hop song I ever heard.
You ever heard?
I'm gonna guess it was the Holiday Rap, which is terrible. Do you remember that? It was like, we are
Yeah,
going
we
on
are
a
going on
summer
a summer
holiday.
holiday. Yeah, yeah, I remember
Yeah,
that. It was like DJ Sven or something like that.
yeah,
I can't
yeah.
remember.
MC Miker G and DJ Sven.
Oh my
That's
God!
it.
Yes, yes, yes. That's it.
And
Okay,
just
that's
in
like
case,
85 or 86, right?
yeah, yeah, that's like, I think that was before the world knew about much rap music, and I think it was literally like some European guy had gone and seen a hip hop concert in New York and was like, I can do this too. I'm going to do the rap music with my friend Sven, and it will be super off as the dope.
Yeah,
And
it
it
was
was not.
quite a thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
The first, I think you mentioned much raps or whatever. I believe the first one was actually called Rap City.
Yep.
Rap City, and I believe the first host of that was Michael
Anthony Michael Hall? No,
Michael.
no. Anthony
No,
Michael Hall was
I think
the actor.
he, yeah, no, I think his name was Michael Anthony.
Yeah, 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 yeah. You're right.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. I may have that wrong, but yeah, he was one of the first Much Music VJs.
Yep.
Actually, I have to credit City TV because I mean, for me, I remember the first hip hop song I ever heard, and it was "The Message" by Grandmaster Flash and Furious Five, and like
Nice.
what an introduction to the genre. Like
Yep.
it's a fantastic song, still fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a little bit. There's a couple of things in there that are dated. There's a couple of casual homophobic remarks in there that don't age well at all. But still, the song is, like I said, very very street, very rebel. And the first place I heard it was on the New Music magazine, and the first punk song I also heard was on the New Music magazine, and that was "Suburban Home" by the Descendants.
Nice. I think the I don't think I could tell you what the first punk song I heard was. Honestly, the growing up where I did, there was very little in the way of punk rock kids. The only ones that I knew were my sister's best friend's older sister and her friends. And they lived two doors down from me, and they were like early punk rock kids. And I thought they were terrible people. So I wrote off everything to do with punk when I was a kid. I just, in my brain, I was like, nope, it's garbage. It's garbage. Losers like that, blah, 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 blah. Totally. And it was, I guarantee you, I heard like a million punk songs, but didn't recognize that they were punk because I just assumed that punk would sound terrible.
Well, I mean,
And
really, what's the difference? I mean, like people who are into metal and people who are into punk exclusively, they'll take huge issue to the statement. But like for me at the time, like, I mean, the first the first heavy rock band that I got into, and at the time they were called heavy metal, whether they are or not, I'll leave that to your discretion. But was Kiss. I mean,
yep.
I was like 5 years old the first time I heard Kiss, and I was like, man, these guys are dressed up with the things, and they're the best, and I'm totally into this. And if you listen to Dress to Kill and like Nevermind the Bollocks, like back to back, there's really not any functional difference. They're both heavy rock records. They got good hooks. They're pretty catchy. They come from the same place. Like the divide between the Sex Pistols and the Ramones and Cheap Trick is not as huge a divide as people would like to conjure.
Oh
And
yeah.
as the genre sort of splintered and changed, I mean, by 1984, I was like, I'm a headbanger. That's my identity. I'm a headbanger. I got my ear pierced at Merle Norman. I had long-ish hair and a denim jacket that I wore everywhere, and that's what I was. I was a headbanger. I mowed lawns for weeks so that I could go to Hot Wax, which was still there in the 80s, by the way, and it's still there now.
Yeah.
And I would buy Power Slave by Iron Maiden because it was the only record I could afford. I'd listen to it 100 times in a row.
Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely.
And so for me, I was a headbanger, but then I'd hear a punk rock song and I'd be like, I like this. This resonates with me.
Yeah.
So in the late 80s, when you started seeing bands that were crossing over genres, when you started to see thrash metal, which is just metal which took the speed and energy of punk, and then crossover skate punk type bands that started to come out, hardcore bands, Agnostic Front, Gorilla Biscuits, TSOL, Bad Brains was super fast. You started to see all that stuff. It made sense to me. It made perfect sense.
Oh, absolutely. I remember seeing an interview with one of the guys from Bad Brains, and he basically said we wrote all our songs and we wrote them at normal time signatures, but then we get to the show and there'd be some girl that, we're like, okay, I'll be right back. I gotta go play this set. Okay, guys, let's play fast. I don't believe that story at all. I'm pretty sure that that's crap, but it's a great story.
It's a funny anecdote. I mean, if you've seen footage, if you've seen the live at CBGB footage of Bad Brains, it's in their DNA.
Oh yeah,
they are just like it's a force of nature. It's unlike anything you'll ever see. It's so crazy.
Yeah, I would.
What a fantastic band, and and really that's where all great music comes from. It comes from that sort of it's a I don't want to say it's a biological imperative, but it's a deep-seated, hardwired need to express yourself in a certain way. And a lot of that comes just from people trying to emulate something else they'd heard. Like Bad Brains loved the Ramones, and they wanted to kind of incorporate that into the jazz fusion stuff that they were doing before that. Black Sabbath was like, well, we're a blues band, but we're going to revolutionize music and invent a genre that's going to last for 60 years. You take what it is that you love about something, and then you recontextualize it and you put it out into the world in your way. That's what makes it special. It's not that you're playing something that nobody else has ever played before. It's that you're playing it. That's what makes it unique. Nothing else.
That's one of the things that I get frustrated when people talk about local bands and local music, and they're like, I'll go see, I'll go to the Saddle Dome and see some REO Speedwagon, of course, but these guys, they're just playing, oh, look, I'm a Green Day band or whatever. And you're like, dude, you've never been to a show and you also have no soul. I can tell this. I can prove it with a slide rule. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I mean, in the end, there's no accounting for taste. I mean, I try really hard. I fail because, let's face it, I've been involved in music for a long time. So I have some pretty deeply held opinions that I'm not shy about, but I also try really hard not to shit all over whatever anybody else is stoked about. That can be a tough thing because, sometimes you like to poke fun and be like, you're into that. But I would never want somebody to feel like I was actually calling them out for listening to something or for liking something. I don't know. Somebody asked me what a nerd was. What delineates a nerd? What actually identifies a nerd? And I was like, well, really, I think that what makes somebody a nerd is being so passionate about something that you don't really care how gauche it seems from outside. Yeah. You don't really care how somebody is well, fuck, this person is such a nerd, or I don't understand what the hell they're talking about. If you're passionate enough about it, then you don't really care. And I feel like that's kind of what defines a nerd. And I mean, I've always kind of been that way about everything in my life. Anything that I'm into all the way.
Yep.
And
Yeah,
I think, like I understand and I appreciate people that have casual interest, casual hobbies, those sorts of things. That's cool. That's awesome. That's not really how I'm wired.
yeah,
So sometimes I kind of put the pedal to the metal, and it's only over the course of my later life that I've started to realize that, wait, just because this is how you function doesn't mean that's how everybody else functions.
yes, yes. I can completely. That resonates with me so much. The being passionate aspect of it, like, when I started playing in bands, one of the first things I started to do was booking shows. And I know you've gone down that road yourself a time or two. Oh crap, my phone's
Yeah,
ringing.
you just got quiet.
Turned the ringer off and everything. But I don't know if you
Mm.
heard that, but it was just loud in my ears. I don't know if anyone else heard it either. But I
No,
think it's
your level just dropped. That's all.
yeah, okay. Um, yeah, like booking shows, and my motivation for booking shows was I wanna have good fun nights, and I wanna meet musicians, and I wanna be able to put these bands together that have never played together before, or that have played together and are just have chemistry, or like whatever. I think a lot of the underground music, and probably all of its varieties, has that same kind of vibe where it's just when you start to get into it and you're immediately like just drawn to I want to make this as cool as I can and help in whatever way I can. That's a nerd.
Yeah, because that exhibits that kind of passion. Like I'm going to create something from nothing,
Yep.
no matter what you're doing. Like I'm going to create something from nothing, for the sole purpose of enjoying it or validating my existence. Like there's plenty of people who create something from nothing every day as part of their job. That's what they're trained to do, and that's what they get paid to do, and that's awesome. That's how the world spins around. But like, to find somebody who's just like, well, we just love to do this thing so much that we're going to figure out a way to make it happen. That's where every DIY scene community starts, and ultimately it's where they end too.
Yeah.
It's the alpha and the omega, is that there's people out there that are passionate enough about it that they're going to make it happen one way or another. And I mean, that was the case for us too. Like when we started playing shows, it was like we got the odd show here and there, and it was like, well, the only way to guarantee that we're gonna get the shows that we want is if we start making them happen ourselves.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. That's one of the curses of every time that I've been involved in any aspect of the music scene. The the gatekeeping that takes place, and the people who just sort of like yourself or myself who just go like, ah, fuck it, I'm doing stuff. I'm just gonna put on some shows. I'm gonna meet some bands, and no one makes money doing this. We're just doing it because what the hell, someone's got to.
Yeah, and I mean that's where, like when I started putting on shows with Mark in 93, 94, that was the goal, was basically just to help to foster a feeling of unity or community. And that comes from people who feel like they're outside of that community. But ultimately, I found that most people were amenable to working together.
Yep.
And in the end, we actually connected with a bunch of other promoters and founded Chumps, which was like just a collective of a bunch of Calgary all ages promoters who were working together. And then eventually we decided that even that wasn't quite accountable enough to the local community. So we folded Chumps and started Just a Bunch of Kids, which was a
I
thing where we
remember
could
just
have
a bunch of kids. Yep.
we could have, like bands would actually come to the meetings every Saturday or Sunday, and people who ran fanzines or who wanted to learn how to do sound or whatever would just come to the meetings. They felt like they
Mm-hmm.
could, and
Yep.
we tried to make them feel like they could. And ultimately, the goal was to make it something like Gilman Street Collective, because at that point, like we had been on tour a couple times and had been down to Berkeley and had seen Gilman, which was this legendary punk rock venue, still there.
Yep.
And we saw how they operated, and we thought that that was something to strive towards. So the idea behind it was that, like, we would sort of start it and nurture it and bring it to this point where the next generation could take it over.
Yeah,
It was
absolutely.
not what we weren't designing it to be like an oligarchy. It was designed to be like something that would be passed down. People would come in, people would go out. They, and it was designed to be self-perpetuating, and it did for a few years after I left, but ultimately it didn't last. And I think part of that is because it didn't have that one thing that Gilman had, which is Gilman has that building. It's their
Yeah.
building. That's where they are. Having a home base made all of the difference. In the late 90s, we had the multicultural center, and they were really like on board, and they helped us a lot. So until they
Yeah.
tore it down.
Yes. Yes. I missed. So I was watching my Discord for online chat, and I missed Nigel Pritchard was in here, just like a bunch of things going. Like, is anyone paying attention? Are you guys gonna take questions? So Nigel, if you're watching, I am now watching the YouTube chat just for you. And anyone else, if you want to chat on the YouTube chat, it's definitely there. I have both open, sort of awkwardly on my screen right now. The joys of wanting to do everything you have, but only having a laptop. There's about 6 million things that I want to do differently, but the
Got to get a
more
second monitor, man, so you can
and a
spread it
computer
out.
with some actual horsepower. I tried at one point to do using my Discord, like stream to my Discord chat and be able to talk and maybe have bring people on camera and stuff. And I was like, this is a great. Holy shit! What is wrong with my computer? And I looked, it was just like 100% pinned across the board, and I was like, yeah. Daddy's gonna have to buy a new computer if he wants this shit. Probably not anytime soon.
But like we said, DIY is about working with what you got, with what you can get, with what you can afford.
Exactly.
So
Exactly. Yeah. No. I think that's probably the thing I like most about the many years I've spent in the music community is it's so much creativity and so many people just being like, you know what, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do my way. I'm gonna whatever. I don't fucking care. I'm just gonna do different things. I'm gonna make my own music. I'm gonna, and it doesn't have to be good, and it doesn't have to be like, super tour worthy or whatever. I just want to play. I just got things inside me I want to get out, like you were saying earlier.
that's really the core of it. I
But
mean, and I mean, I've had this conversation with a lot of people, even quite recently, about how because I've known a lot of musicians over the years, right? I've known a lot of people who were die hard and who have sort of fallen by the wayside. They went off and found other
yeah,
things in their lives, and that's awesome. I
hmm
applaud people who move on, and do their own thing.
yep,
But a lot of the reason that I think that happens, people sort of get cynical because they expect it to give them something back. Like they're like, well, I'm going to make a living doing this, or I'm going to, you know, get a lot of people, sexually interested in me for doing this, or whatever it is
and
that they,
boy,
or
howdy
I'm gonna
do we.
party, I'm gonna party and have drugs and whatever. And it's like, for me, I've always tried to maintain a core of like, the reason I do this is because I have to. Like,
Yeah,
I make music because it's who I am, and I don't think I would feel right without it. In fact, in the last year and a half, even though I've been making music, I haven't been on stage, and even that has not felt right. I have had
hmm
some struggles with that. So it's at the core of who I am, and I can't really live without it. And so I try really, really hard, because I'm just like anybody else. I've been doing this a long time. I've been playing music for 30 years now.
yep.
So there are times when I'm like, I should be further along. Like I should be making more money or more well known or whatever,
You
and it's
you
easy
play
to
in
get that.
Belvedere.
Yeah, I love playing in Belvedere. It's
That's
fantastic.
yeah. To me,
It's
that's always been like, from a Calgary music perspective, bands like Belvedere and Downway are the guys that toured the world and saw all the things that I will never see, and so,
yeah.
that's not me going
I
like,
mean,
be satisfied already, Casey. It's nothing like that, but just like, in a lot of ways, you are living that. But it's not.
and there are
Go ahead.
definitely things that I've done with Belvedere that have been dreams fulfilled and continue to be so. So I'm definitely grateful for that. But that's actually the point I'm trying to make, is that no matter who you are, no matter what level you're at, there's always going to be that next hurdle or that thing, like, I mean, I've toured with Belvedere a whole bunch, and I've been all over the world with them, and I've played some amazing shows, but it's still not like, we work hard at it, but it's still not something that makes a living. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, we all have other jobs. We all have to make our ducats somewhere. It's just how it is. And that makes us like 90% of other musicians out there, especially right now, but like, it's still applicable in other years.
Oh
So
yeah.
we do our best and make the most of it, and see things and do things that we've always wanted to do. And I'm grateful for it. But that's the point I'm trying to make, is that, like, if you expect anything out of it other than just the reward of playing the music, then you're liable to be disappointed at one point or another, because you're always looking for something that isn't really there.
Yeah.
And I think it takes your attention and your focus away from what you should be focusing on, which is this the best representation of what me and my cohort want to say as artists? Like, are we actually
Yeah.
getting across what we want to get across? Are we having the most fun we can have on stage? Because, like, I've played shows with Belvedere where we played for 35,000 people, and I've played shows with Belvedere where we played for 80 people. And I play just as hard either way.
Yeah.
It doesn't make a difference to me. I want every person who's there, regardless of how many people are there, to have the best possible time and to feel like that we served it up. Period. Because that's what I am.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah, and the interesting thing is, I'm thinking back to the handful of times I saw the Everymen play, when I saw the Martyr Index play, the Evidence, the Failure. Am I missing anything?
Oh yeah, but I mean, those are the big ones. Those
The
are
big
those
ones.
are the bands that were like, I was in those bands. I
Yeah.
definitely have played for or filled in for a number of bands in my time, but
Oh yeah. But
you
every
you you
time,
got all the big ones. You got all the big ones.
yeah, every time watching you play, no matter the size of the show, you're always like, you are so immersed in the moment, and so just like giving it your all. And that's the hardest thing. Like, as a guy who's played not any shows to 35,000, but plenty of shows to 80 and under.
Yeah.
It's hard sometimes, and it's easy to forget. And I think it comes back to what you were talking about earlier with that, the world owes me kind of a vibe. You play enough shows, and then you go play a show where it's a little bit less packed, or a little bit, less attention being paid, and those are really important learning moments where you're like, I need to be able to do this to nobody. I need to be like, why am I here? Am I here to, be popular and cool, or am I here to make music? Because I'm here to make music, and you just have to find other ways to channel that. But not a lot of people seem to do that I wouldn't say easily as you, because I don't know if it's easy or not, but as obviously as you.
I would say that it's not easy, and it's getting harder every year.
Mm-hmm.
Like, as my mortal frame starts to, disintegrate before my very eyes, it gets really difficult to play music, especially of that velocity and difficulty,
Yeah. Well,
consistently and
I
well. And so I have to do it more to keep doing it as well as I have. And I never ever want to feel like I didn't leave it all out there. And so even when I'm rehearsing, I try and leave it all in the rehearsal room, because you get used to it. You get used to, like, draining yourself completely, and when you walk off stage, you're like, okay, I did the best I could there. I
yeah.
gave it every little piece. And I think you just have to maintain that mentality, because it becomes really easy to get fatalistic about it when you do have a show that's rough. Like, I don't know, the Evidence once played a show. We were on tour in Europe for the first time, and most of the shows were pretty good, but we played a show in Montpellier, France, that there was one person, and he left halfway
Uh,
through.
Ouch.
But
Yes.
the thing that was bad about it too is it was in the basement of this place,
Yeah.
and so there were people upstairs, but nobody watching us.
Mm-hmm.
And so there wasn't even like bar staff or anybody there that we could, like, at least mug at, and so we really, about halfway through, it became a rehearsal.
Yep.
like that we traveled halfway around the world to play a rehearsal in this weird dungeon. And it was a dungeon. It was like this, like it was like an old style like sewer pipe,
Yep.
like it was maybe, I don't know, 11 or 12 feet across. It had this like rope bridge that we had to carry our gear over. It was super weird. It was one of the weirdest shows I've ever played. And after we played it, we all just sort of looked at each other and started laughing. Like, we played like we meant it still.
Mm-hmm.
And we maintained that attitude of like, well, this is a story.
Yeah.
Because what
Absolutely.
else are you going to do? You can get down in the mouth about it, but like ultimately, like it's just going to siphon some of your joy of doing it.
Oh, absolutely. And it's every experience is a worthwhile experience, unless you're killing somebody or something. But like, do you remember the first time we ever met? Because I do.
Was it back at the shit? I
The
want to say
Liberty
like,
Lounge.
was it really?
Yeah, it was the Liberty Lounge, which is
I
weird
was gonna
because
I was gonna say the first. What do they call it? It was the first distillery I thought in the where Quincy's was on
yeah,
Seventh
yeah,
Avenue there.
that
I
was the
thought it was
second
there.
distillery. That was the second distillery, and we
Where
we
was the
did.
first one?
It was on if you're coming in from the north into downtown, you turn onto like Fifth Ave, and it was right
I
there
thought
where
that was I thought that was the second one, the one that was like by Eau Claire, kind of.
that was the third one.
Okay, so there was another
Yeah,
one that was there.
yeah,
Okay, all right.
yeah.
Oh wait, no, I think I know what you're talking about. It was on like the bottom floor of like a stack, like an office stack or like an
Yeah,
apartment building or something.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Anyways, I thought it was
Anyways,
there, but I guess not. Liberty Lounge. So
yeah,
that must
Liberty
have been
Lounge.
later than I thought, because the Liberty
Yes.
Lounge was what, like it was like 2001 or 2002 that they started doing shows.
Yeah, I think I'm not sure when, but yeah, it would have been in that kind of area. It was you were going on tour. It was the first night kicking
Okay,
off the
so I
tour.
remember it. It was a Meter Invasion tour, so it was
Yeah.
the Failure, One Shot Left, and Bogart,
Yep.
and that was the first show of it.
And I knew Colin from high school.
Okay, you went to Churchill then, yeah?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Want to be rich kid. Just kidding. And I went. So I went to high school with Colin, and I'd seen the Everymen play a few times and stuff. But
Did you wait? I have a question for you. This is a
sure.
serious question now.
Yeah.
Did you see us perform as Famous Last Words in the cafeteria at Winston Churchill in like 1990 or 91?
I would have been at the school at the time, but I
We played. We
don't.
played.
That
We
doesn't sound familiar.
They did like a lunch hour series. It was at the end of the year, so right before like while everybody was taking their diploma exams and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And basically there was like a lunch hour series that Colin and some of his friends there, like Ryan Blomfield and Corey Makar
Yeah.
and all those guys, had kind of worked out. And so like one lunch hour they had like Jeremy Elliott's band and then Ryan Blomfield's band or whatever, and then they had us play, and we had just started when we were called Famous Last Words, so we weren't even called the Everymen yet. And
Yep.
there was like a well, I don't want to call it a riot, because basically it had been sort of predetermined that during the last song that we played, which was a cover of Mouth for War by Pantera,
Mm-hmm.
that everybody was just going to start moshing in this cafeteria. It was going to be like a mosh fest. And so people started to mosh, and people were jumping off of like tables and stuff. And it was just a general pandemonium. And the vice principal came through the crowd, like throwing kids aside. And we had it all on videotape, and he like smashed my cymbal. He was like, "Stop or I'll wreck your equipment." And then he karate chops this kid. He grabs this kid and karate chops him. We had it all on camera.
Yep.
And so we took it to the news, and there was a story about it. I just wondered if you'd seen that, because if you
I
were there at the same time as Colin, then
Yeah, I was a year older than Colin, but
okay, Colin would have been
I
in a
st-
grade 11 at that point, so I think that would have been the year you were graduating then.
I took an extra year also, so
Okay.
Colin and I wound up in the same graduating class. But anyway, so I went down to catch you guys, and somehow I didn't put two and two together about like taking public transit home. So I was like, okay, gonna have to leave before you guys play. That sucks. And I told Colin this, and Colin's like, I'll be right back. And he goes over and grabs you, and he's like, hey, can we give my buddy Jim a ride home? And I lived like right down the street from you. Like literally at the time, I lived like 3 blocks from where you were at on Northmount.
Right.
And so at the
The
end of the
original
night,
Echo base.
yeah, the original Echo base. So I hopped in the car or the van with you and I think Colin and Trez and Franny were all in this car. And you guys are all telling these amazing tour stories. And this is like, I've been in Johnny Incognito for a few years. We've played a couple of out of town shows, but like we're not a big band. But I'm in the car with, the Everymen and Kilborn and little old me. And you guys are telling all these cool stories. And eventually I was
They
like,
weren't. They
I
weren't.
played a show.
I don't think they were Kilborn yet, were they?
I think so.
I think they. By at that point, they were probably still Honey Rocket.
They might. Yeah, I think
Because I,
you might be right.
I figured that probably would have been 2004.
I think you might be right.
2004 probably the meter
Either
invasion.
way.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was still with Billy at the time, so 2004, 2005 could have been 2005.
Something
So if it was
in that
2000,
era.
if it was 2005, they may have been Kilborn. But
Yeah.
I feel like they were still Honey Rocket. But anyways, that's a
Either way. But people who have done and played amazing shows, and I'm just like, one time I played in Nanton. It was the only thing I contributed to the conversation. So when I say, do you remember the first time, and you didn't, that's actually pretty reasonable because I did nothing to stand out.
I thought it was earlier than that, honestly. I seem to recall it earlier, but the memory starts to fail when you're my age. Huh?
Yeah,
But what you were saying about tour is like, it's easy to belittle what you've experienced, but like the truth is the journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step, right?
Yep.
The
Absolutely.
the big secret, like everybody wants to look for an easy magic secret to getting things done. And in my experience, the only secret is doing them. That's it.
Yep.
The trick to doing them is doing them.
Yep.
You don't have to be great at them at first. You don't have to instantly like pick sticks up or pick up a guitar or pick up a video camera or whatever and expect to be great at it right away. There are so many people who never ever realize their potential in a given field because they're discouraged by how bad they are at the beginning. If I was discouraged by how bad I was at the beginning of something, then I never would have done half the things I've done.
Totally. It's one of those things that's it's really, especially for creative people, when they try something and it doesn't immediately be, sort of not necessarily like come supernaturally and easy, but if you don't immediately feel that like I did all right, it's so easy to just be like, nope, I suck at this and we'll never do it again. But when people and I talk with people all the time, and I regularly will get asked like, oh my God, how do you find the time to do all the things that you do? And I'm sure you're probably had this conversation as well. My answer is always, because I want to find the time. It's things I like doing, so I do them.
Yeah, and I mean I get that central premise, like when people are like, how do you find the time? Because like I've built my life so that there are times for certain things, right?
Yeah.
But even I don't get to practice as much as I used to or as much as I like to most of the time.
Yeah.
There was a time when I played drums every single day, without exception. I would play drums for at least an hour every single day, sometimes two. Yeah. And now I play 4 hours a week, so it's like half what I used to play. And sometimes that's just because you got other things going on, And, in my case, a lot of times it's because of limited space. Like if I have a drum kit set up in the studio for tracking with a client, then I don't have my kit set up because I have somebody else's kit set up and I can't mess with that because it's set up for recording and it needs to sound the way it sounds.
Yeah. So, move one drum and find out.
Yeah, exactly. And so, and sometimes that's the case. And sometimes like right now I'm in the middle of sort of learning a new skill. I sort of was getting a little bit crazy. We finished the Belvedere record in January, and I knew I had to film some promo content for the record, and I sort of fell down a like a rabbit hole with video stuff. So I
Mm-hmm.
decided I was going to buy some quality gear, some quality cameras, and then it was like I had rigs and lights, and I have all the stuff that I couldn't really afford, and actually was probably pretty inadvisable. And ultimately, it's, you know, budget stuff because that's what I could afford. But it's a new skill, and it's something that I'm learning how to do. So right now I have all of these lights set up in my studio to do this giant sort of filming project to sort of like learn how to get
Yep.
good at it. And I'm not good at it yet, which is humbling, but
I
I've been
totally,
trying. Yeah,
totally
I've
get
been
that.
trying really hard to learn how to be good at not being good, because
That is
my whole
such a
life has
hard
been,
thing.
yeah, my whole life has been an exercise in not doing things in front of people that I didn't already know that I was at least semi competent at.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
I never want to appear like I don't know what I'm doing or that I'm incompetent. So so trying really hard to just be like, you're not good at this, do it anyways. Just
Yep.
fight through it,
That
because
is
it's,
so hard.
yeah, when you're in a practice space by yourself playing the drums, trying to learn how to, I don't know, do a particular technique. It's really easy to just do that over and over and over and over and over again because you're by yourself, nobody's watching, and it's cool.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes it's actually really good to sort of put it out there and be like, "Yep, I'm not good at this. Come at me, bro." You
Yep.
know?
I totally get it. You know, I've never been like an awe-inspiring bass player. Bass was primary instrument for a few years, and then didn't touch it for a few years, and then, you know, off and on. I played upright for a while, but always self-taught, and never like it never really been the focus of my life. I enjoy doing it, but you know, I never really figured I'd do much more than, you know, simple punk rock stuff. And then over time, I started doing more than simple punk rock stuff, and it was a really interesting process to kind of figure out that I had that ability, and that it wasn't innate. I had to like learn how to be better at it. And then when I joined Dr. James Reddy's ska band, I was filling the role of a very, very good bass player who's still way out of my league. And I was like, I need to do this, and I need to do it regularly. And I actually started practicing with Facebook Live, because it
Yeah,
was
I've seen a
like,
couple of those.
yeah, and it was literally like an opportunity for me to be like, well, I just need to practice. I need to get better at this, and you know, maybe putting it out into the world, maybe that's going to make people go, you should practice more or whatever, and you know, have that resonate in my head that, you know, like I need to do this. And it actually, it's kind of a poor way of explaining it, but it was really, really beneficial, and helped me improve dramatically just doing that. So, you know, when COVID hit and everyone's making sourdough bread, I'm playing trumpet and bass, and I mean, I went hungry, but you know, no sourdough bread for me, but it was good.
I I get that entirely. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the basic gist of it with learning how to do video stuff, and learning how to light correctly and do color grading, and, you know, set
Yep.
exposures, and, you know, I mean, it's it's a it's a lot to digest all at once. I mean, it
And a
helps
whole
that I
new
have a
language.
yeah, and ultimately what you were saying about, like, you know, being, you know, good at the punk rock thing and then trying to translate that skill to something else. Really, music is a language, so everything you learn about it is just something that expands your vocabulary.
Yeah.
That's it, you know,
Totally.
like, and having more words, more syntax at your disposal to say what you want to say never
Mm-hmm.
ever hurts you. It never hurts
Yep.
you. It can't hurt. It can't. All it can do is make you a better musician. So
Yep.
understanding how, like, and you can kind of hear that too if you there's plenty of examples even in punk rock, you know, like, here's no effects at ribbed, and
Mm-hmm.
here's no effects white trash.
Yep.
And what's the big difference? Well, they got a guy in the band who understands music really well. Like, El Jefe is a great musician, and he elevated all of them.
Yep.
He
Absolutely.
taught them more about their craft than they may have known previously. At least that's how I interpreted it. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, and that's just one example in punk rock. I mean,
I think a lot of like,
He came from like, Latin Afro-Cuban music. Like he had a broad experience in music that they were able to utilize, and it
yep.
made them better. And so I don't really see as there's anything wrong with like learning those ways of speaking,
Well, and
communicating.
I think that there's something to be said about, especially with punk rock, you can get into it with that aloof sort of like, no, we're terrible, but it's cool, we're punk rock. But when you do it after a while, you start being like, I kind of like want to be better at this, and I want to try new things, and like it becomes something that you're willing to take that sort of shield down and be like, no, you know what? I can do better. It's not. I'm not just up here ironically flopping around. I'm actually proud of what I'm doing, and I want to get better at it. I know, like for me, that was totally. It was a hard realization to make because I'm so used. I grew up a skinny little weakling, so I grew up self-deprecating and hiding from any experiences I could, and then I got when I got into music, obviously no longer skinny. I was a big guy at that point. And it was easy just to have that shield up and be like, hey, I'm stupid and funny and haha. And then, a couple, years go by and I'm like, fuck, I like this. I can admit to myself that I like this and that I want to be better at it. And that's okay. That's cool.
I mean, you'll find that I feel like that's a pretty common experience among people who get into creative fields, especially people who get into entertainment fields. I mean, there aren't that many great comedians in human history who are, fully functional, who are completely
Yep.
normal, or who don't have a deep reservoir of sadness that they're able to utilize and then turn on its head to make comedy, because that's really all the difference is between comedy and drama, right? They say
Yep.
timing is the only difference.
Yep.
So I think that it's something that a lot of great artists and entertainers have is something that they can draw from, some sort of pathos that's carried around inside them.
Yeah.
Maybe not all. I'm not saying that that's a unilateral truth. I'm just saying that like a disproportionate amount.
Yes.
And I know a lot of artists personally who have some sort of, they're neurodivergent.
Yep.
Like, I mean, I think I'm neurodivergent. I'm not diagnosed, but I think I'm pretty sure I'm on the spectrum somewhere because of the way that I process information and fixate on details.
Yep.
The way my memory works. I know plenty of people who are neurodivergent in arts and in creative fields, in
Yep.
entertainment, and the same holds true for people with mood disorders and emotional disorders. Like I said, there's definitely people who don't have those things to deal with in those fields, but I think they're probably in the minority, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I completely agree. I think a lot of like there's certain like archetypal image that we all have of like rock stars and stuff, and I feel like that is the farthest thing from the truth. The idea of the egomaniac is valid, but I feel like it's the egomaniac. When you encounter that type of musician, I think it's that deep inner insecurity that is just on display in that instance. But whether they're the egomaniacal lead singer or the quiet bass player or whatever, I don't think I've ever met a musician that I would think like there's a fellow that probably isn't going to chop somebody. And I'm obviously kidding, but you know what I mean. Like there's definitely amongst all of us, we are not normal, and I'm pretty sure we're okay with it.
I mean, if normalcy is actually a thing, I mean, I know they call it neurotypical. Like you're neurotypical if you fall within this particular bandwidth of neurological activity, be either in information processing or in emotional processing or spatial awareness or whatever. There's a number of categories in which they define whether somebody's neurotypical. But I think that people who actually rest within the boundaries of neurotypical are probably in the minority, so they're not actually typical at all. But that's neither here nor there. Regardless of what, I guess, what you're dealing with internally, what your genetics, what your psychology, what your pathology and your trauma contribute to your character, regardless of who you are. I think that's one thing that all human beings have in common. Like, we all understand what it's like to be insecure.
Yeah.
We all understand fear, but we process those things differently. And then sometimes you get people who don't know how to process them at all, and so they turn to what you were describing, like egomania, and then even further, like malignant narcissism. Those sorts of things can be toxic. I mean, the president of the United States for 4 years was a malignant narcissist.
Yep.
Somebody who actually had he had no toes in reality. He had no understanding of what was actually happening in the world or who he was. And I think that, like, that's a fucking terrifying way to live.
Oh,
Can you imagine? Like,
Yeah,
that's horrible. I mean, I my insecurities, I'm aware of them. I know what they are, and I know why I have them.
Yeah.
And sometimes they cripple me, and sometimes I'm able to get past them and actually make the most of my time and my life and my energy. But the fact that I understand and can identify those things in myself is actually how I can understand and identify those things in other people. So
yeah,
to be a malignant narcissist, to be that kind of person, means that you, in a way, you're always alone.
and I think it's a very empty life, because you
Of course.
feel in those moments where everyone sort of terrifyingly is doing the oh, you're so great and we're absolutely your friend, out of self-preservation. In those moments you feel, I think, because you don't recognize it for what it is, you feel like, I have arrived, I am finally getting what is due me, and then it fades because it has to fade.
And you said something about self-preservation. Honestly, I don't think that's it for a lot of people. I think that there's a lot of people out there who are frightened. They're frightened of the future. They're frightened of change. They're frightened of other people. They're frightened of all the things that they don't understand about the world. And so to see somebody who comes along and is like, I know all the answers. I know everything. I'm super great. You can trust me. I never lie. Whatever. The litany of untruths that somebody like that says about themselves. Of course, people who are afraid and they don't feel like they have an anchor to reality, of course they're going to latch onto something like that. That's where idolatry comes from. It comes from the idea that somebody can lend any sort of meaning or definition to your life or the things that are happening in the world. And I think that's a story as old as time. So
yeah, it absolutely is. I remember.
I mean,
watching,
I definitely don't. I don't feel too much in the way of sympathy for people who attach themselves to those ideologies. But I do understand it. Like, I understand where it comes from, and I understand what it's like to be afraid. I think the problem is that instead of looking to the people who are next to you, who are around you, in your community, in your neighborhood, in your scene, quote unquote, like to commiserate with, or to find some sort of emotional, intellectual level to communicate on and be like, okay, well, we have a common experience. Let's get down, whatever.
Yeah.
Then you're going to look further away, and you're going to have less of a grounded context in which to analyze those things or to understand those things. Because I think on a fundamental level, sorry, I'm kind of rambling here, but I think on a fundamental level, okay, I'll put it to you in these terms, and I've said this before to other people actually. I had a friend who was taking anthropology. This was about 15 or 20 years ago, and he said to me, "Well, the thing that differentiates man from the lower forms is the usage of tools." And I'm like, I don't know that I agree. I mean, chimpanzees use tools and weapons and stuff like that.
Yep.
I don't think that's really the thing. I think the thing that differentiates man from the lower forms is stories. Really. Mm-hmm. I think stories are super important. I think that being able to relay information, be it fictional or practical, is how we actually learn. We learn about the world. We learn about ourselves. We learn everything that we need to know from stories. And like I said, even fictional stories. I mean, my character is informed by loads and loads of fictional stories, and I think that those things are part of who I am. And so if if you take a story, if you take a fictional story, like somebody says, okay, Lord of the Rings is real. This is how it happened. This is the history of Earth. Then you're going to identify with characters in Lord of the Rings in a different way than if somebody said, okay, well, Lord of the Rings is fiction. It's something that somebody made up. The character of Aragorn represents a heroic archetype in the books. He's not a real person. So living up to him is fucking impossible.
Mm-hmm.
And so you need to actually like put that on yourself. See, for me, that's useful. I can actually look at characters and say, okay, well, they represent things that I see in myself, and they also represent things that I hate about myself. If I'm honest with myself about those things, and I can glean something from it, and I can learn something from it, move on. And I think that like as time has gone on, I've become more honest with myself as a person, but also more honest with myself as an artist as a result. So when I actually create art, I'm saying something that's a little bit more grounded in something intentional or purposeful inside me. And so really, I think that that's sort of the core of it, is like how much honesty is involved in your analysis of yourself. Are you actually being real with who you are?
Yeah.
Because if you're just inventing a narrative that because we all do that to some extent. We all are like, this is the person we are to people outside of ourselves.
I like
this is the fictional character of Casey Lewis, right?
Yeah.
I like it better when people know who I really am. That's more valuable to me.
Oh,
whereas,
yeah, absolutely.
There are people out there like Donald Trump, obviously, who don't have anything at all except for that. There's not a real person in there because he's erased it.
I read an interesting thing, and I don't remember where or how I came, whether it was read or somebody whispered it in my ear on public transit. I have no idea. But the sentiment of it was that the lies we tell are just as important to understanding who we are as the truths we tell and the actions that back up our words, because our actions show who we are, but our lies show who we think we are or who we wish we were. And I always thought that was a really fascinating thing.
And I think that's true, but I also think that to somebody who's like, a narcissist or an egotist, those lies are Schrodinger's cat. Like, if you tell a lie long enough, if you have invented a narrative long enough, you'll start to believe it. Like, we've seen that time and time again. And when that happens, then is the cat alive or dead? Doesn't really matter. It's a superposition state, right? You can't say definitively whether it's alive or dead. Have you buried the truth? Have you become the lie? At that point, it doesn't matter, because they can't actually look at themselves with any degree of objectivity at all. And of course, most people can't look at themselves with a large amount of objectivity. But it's a good exercise to try and do it frequently.
Yeah. So Casey, I just want to quickly say it's 6:03.
Mm-hmm.
You had said that you had a hard stop, and I just want to make sure I'm being respectful of your time, so you're aware.
Yeah, I got about 10 more minutes.
10 more minutes? Okay, cool. I didn't want to end things, but I also didn't want to, like, at 6:14 and 59 seconds be like, and we're done.
Well, now everybody knows we got about 10 more minutes, and then I'm gonna go if anybody's listening. But if nobody's listening, it's still a great conversation. I'm enjoying this. So.
Oh, me too. And I knew I would. That's something that doing these has been really enjoyable for me with COVID, but it's also it's reminded me how much joy I get out of just a conversation with a friend, right? I wouldn't describe you and I as like super tight, close knit homies or anything like that, but we've been in the same scene and had many a conversation, and I certainly hold you in the highest of esteems. I'm sure that's
likewise.
Likewise.
Yeah, likewise.
Reno, Steve
I know you.
Listening.
I like you. I respect. Steve Johnson, like the drummer, Steve Johnson.
Yeah, my drummer in Bodies of Everest. That's right, yeah. Steve. Casey knows who you are. That's the guy who is constantly making me have to count to 11 and 13 and stuff.
It's a good skill to learn.
Yeah, absolutely.
But what comes better is when you learn to not count it. You count it first.
Yeah.
You get through it and get through the count, and then you get to the point where you just sort of understand what that feels like or what that sounds like or how the groupings work. Because when you're dealing with anything that's over that's over a certain count, you have to break it up into groupings, right? Is it,
Yep.
is 7 a grouping of 4 and 3, or 3 and 4, or 2 and 2 and 1? So those sorts of things.
Yeah, absolutely. And when that first was explained to me by Steve, I was like, well, yeah, of course, that makes sense. I'm doing 7, so I do 3 and then 4 and then 3 and then 4. Yeah, no problem. Then I tried it, and I'm super excited about the fact that now I can do that, and I can come up with a groove that's in some odd number time signature, and find that way to internalize it and stuff. But man, that was a bitch of a learning curve.
And it still will be. I mean, you'll
Oh yeah.
you'll find music that you're like, what the fuck is going on there? And then you'll have to know. You'll be like, I need to figure this out right now.
We were gonna cover Goliath, I believe, by Carnival. And they had been playing it, just jamming before I joined the band for years, and they were like, "Here, let's play this, learn this song." And I've never listened to a lot of prog metal, so threw on the cans and, listening to the song, and I'm like, "What the hell count is this? Like, why can't I count this?" And I wound up seeing a video of, I can't remember the guy's name, Reno will know it, but the guy who breaks down songs and does so in the most amazingly articulate fashion, understanding all of the nuances of the musical theater behind, or the musical theory behind them.
Sounds like Rick Beato.
I think that may very well have been
older guy with like whitish hair.
Yeah, and he's talking about that song, and I was like, "Yes, preach! Tell me what it is." It's like 27/4 time or something like this. Like he had broken it out, and when you listen to it and you like dumbly count along, it's exactly right. It's phrased in groups of 7, and then every now and then they just drop one. And it's not every now and then; it's on a steady flow. But until that was said, I was just like, I don't know why I can't figure this out. It just feels like every time I think I've got it, I'm missing a beat.
Most time signatures, because they're fractions, can be broken down in a relatively understandable way. You just have to kind of understand what it is at first that's being done, and that's an instinct thing. But like okay, so let's say you had a signature that was 17/4.
Yeah.
Counting it as 17/4 is, in most cases, that's going to be somebody intentionally abstracting a time signature. That's a lot simple. Because why would it be 17/4? Why wouldn't it be like 4/4 for 4 bars and then 1 count of 4?
Yeah.
Or 4/4 for 3 bars and then a 5 count. Like you can usually like compartmentalize each bar to be something in and of itself. It's when you get to counts that are smaller fractions that things become a little thornier, right? Like, and
5/4.
We were talking about.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, 5/4 is an interesting time signature because it's one of the ones that people have a lot of trouble with at first. But like some of my, I was talking to you earlier via text about how
Airline.
It's a good example. That's just a dropped beat. That's a rush trick. That's a full-on rush trick where it's like, okay, we're just going to drop a beat out of this, no problem. Yeah. Easy thing to do. In the evidence days, what we would try to do is we would try to write time signatures that felt the same, like irrespective of your perspective. So like, somebody who didn't understand odd times would be like, okay, well, I can bounce my head to this, and it's, and it makes sense, and you can do that if you're coming at it from the right direction, if you're not intentionally trying to make it sort of angular or difficult to digest, and that's fine too. But that's the kind of stuff I did earlier when I first started learning how to play drums and how to play music, is making odd time signatures where like, see, look at how complicated I can make things. But then over time, you start to learn the value of like time signatures that actually make some sort of musical sense and you can understand. Everybody in the world knows the Mission Possible theme song.
Yep.
It's, dun 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 dun. It's one of the best examples of 5/4 there is.
Yep.
1 2 3 4 5. 1 2 3 4 5. It's super easy to understand. And if you told somebody it was in 5, they'd be like, okay, whatever.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
Take Five by the Dave Brubeck Quartet's another good example.
Great song.
Like the groove is
Hmm.
completely unaffected by the fact that it's in 5/4.
Yep. The first time I ever knowingly heard a 5/4 song, I bought a cassette on my way to go visit my grandparents. I was taking the night Greyhound to Penticton, and so I bought a cassette from a Walkman, and it was Frank Black and the Catholics. I think it was Frank Black and the Catholics, and there was a song on there that was in 5/4, and it had been so long since I'd done any. I had musical theory when I was a little kid, and then at this point I was mid 20s, and I'm listening to the song, and I keep playing it back, and I'm like, what, what, why am I not getting? And then I realized, like, I started counting, and I was like, this is in 5/4. And my mom has a degree in music, so like her
Okay.
idiot son gets to Penticton the next morning. Mom, I counted to 5. She's like, I'm so very proud of you, son. You're great.
But that's what it is really. It's milestones. It's
Yep.
milestones, Like, and that goes for anything you're learning. It doesn't matter
Yep.
whether it's music or whatever, but like for us, music obviously is a big one. And while there's a lot of things that I sort of take for granted about what I know about music now because they're just sort of inborn, it's like, opening a door or taking a walk,
Yep.
I can count odd time signatures, right? It's not something that's usually very difficult for me. But, when I first started learning how to play drums, that stuff was the thing. And when you learned how to do something like that, it was like, I've cracked it. I've cracked the code. Like it feels like a big deal. And it
Yep.
is. It's a
Level
big
up.
deal. Exactly. It's
Yep.
milestones. And I mean, when you first start, it's like that. The climb's like that, right? It's like
Yep.
you're getting so much better each day, and then over time, it sort of levels off.
Yep.
And then the things that you get better at over time as it levels off, they're not like technique things.
Hmm.
They're, or at least not for me, they're not technique things. They're more like understanding things. Like,
Yeah.
okay, now this works in a context that I never understood before. Like, I listen to things with a different kind of appreciation now. The
Yep.
magic's gone a
Absolutely.
little bit, and people always get a little sad when I tell them that. Like, the magic's gone a little bit. I don't listen to music with the same innocence that I used to. There's always like analyses going on at all times. Like, how does this fit? What is going on here? Where's this sound fitting? Frequencies, time signatures, all that stuff. It's all like it's kind of like the Terminator's display, right? There's always shit going on in your field of view where you're like,
Yeah.
and
You know what I would
and
liken it to? When I accepted a long time ago that I was an atheist, and I had been raised in a tradition that was very religious, and one of the things people always talk about when they're speaking sort of from the religious perspective is looking out over like a mountain scene and how you were just sort of awed by the wonder of God's creation. And when I told people that I was an atheist, they would sort of immediately assume that I wouldn't be capable of that wonder anymore. And I would say that I just have a whole different kind of awe and respect for, so the magic may be gone, but there's a whole new science behind it, or whatever. And the
I
goal
get
of
that.
understanding is just as strong.
For me, it was a price I willingly paid. Like if
Yep.
somebody had said to me, okay, well you can learn all this stuff about music and you'll be good at it someday, but you will never ever be able to listen to, I don't know, I'll pick a song from my youth, a song from, your teenage years
Stutter rap.
with the same. I don't know. I was gonna say "She Sells Sanctuary" by The Cult because when I was 12 and 13, The Cult was like my favorite band. That was well before I
Hmm.
started playing music. Yeah, I still love that song. It's still a great song, but you just don't listen to it the same way. And I,
Yep.
I remember talking to somebody I met who was like a compositor, CGI and digital compositing, digital matte painting, stuff like that. Did all that stuff for film and television. And they were like I don't sit in a movie theater and get transported anymore. That's not what happens.
Yeah.
Like the price that you pay for understanding what goes on behind the curtain is that what goes on behind the curtain is no longer a process of magic. It's no longer something that happens outside your field of view. It's now something that you're directly involved in and you can relate to on some level or another. And when that happens, you can be bummed out about it, or you can realize that that's the price that you paid for understanding it more completely. And I compared it to falling in love. When you first fall in love with somebody and everything's, passionate and exciting and it's all sunshine and rainbows and you're taking days off work to spend with each other and like really impractical stuff that cannot be sustained for any length of time. Eventually you start to settle into your life. And then you start building a life with that person. And that seems kind of mundane. And that's when people are like, oh, well, the magic's gone and there's no more passion. And I think you trade all that stuff for something a little bit more deep and abiding, which is that like this person actually knows who you are. Mm-hmm. They understand who you are and they still want to be with you. That's a different kind of magic. It may not be as exciting or as obvious. It may not set your nerves on fire in the same way. But that's like a real understanding, and it's the same thing with becoming good at something with developing some sort of mastery of your craft at some level.
Yep.
Is that you may lose that the nerves on fire excitement that you get when you're 13 years old and you're listening to, I don't know, Ride the Lightning for the first time and you're like, oh my God, this is the best thing I've ever heard. Like that goes away and it's replaced with an understanding of how it all works.
Yeah.
I'd do it again in a heartbeat, Jim. Do it again in a heartbeat.
Absolutely. You and me both. Speaking of do it again in a heartbeat, I'd love to do this again in a heartbeat.
Sure.
I've definitely enjoyed having a chat with you. But
likewise, man.
It's 6:16 and I don't want to keep you from the things that you're going to be doing. I bet they're cool.
I'm going to be going out. I'm going out and shooting video. I have a video shooting date with a photographer friend of mine, and we're gonna go take video during golden hour and all that stuff. So it's a hard date that I made before I made this, and I'm excited about it because I'm going to be learning more about that craft too.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again. So good to
thank you for having me, man.
And we will talk again soon. I hope you stay well and stay happy.
I should probably plug the new Belvedere record at least once, right? At least
totally
one time.
Do that.
Ostensibly, that's part of why I'm here.
Let me just say, I'm on a scale of 1 to 10. I'm a 13 in excitement. Is that enough?
Well, I don't want to disappoint, but there are 4 singles currently out. Mm-hmm. Three singles currently out. I'm sorry. There's Good Grief Retreat, Elephant March, and Camera Obscura just came out today, available on all your major streaming services. The album is Hindsight is the Sixth Sense. The band is Belvedere. The album drops on May 14th. I heartily recommend that everybody listens to it and pre-orders it if they're so inclined, because we worked really hard on it. I think it's a great record.
Yeah. And if you're looking to buy it on Bandcamp, Bandcamp Friday's coming soon. All the money goes to the musicians. So find way to support some Calgary folks making good. I'm really excited about it. All right, I'll let you get going. I know you're in a rush.
Thanks very much,
so
Jim.
much, man. You take care.
Yeah, you too.
Alrighty.
Peace out.
Peace. All right, man.